All right, we are live for game day live. Fantasy football endgame. Welcome. I'm Pierre. With me is Chris. And our first live show, we've been on for a couple weeks now, talking about starts at waivers, breaking news. We have a lot of news, but today the point is injury talk. And Chris, unfortunately, we also have some COVID talk. So there's a lot to go over today, isn't there? All right, we are live for game day live. Fantasy football endgame.
Sorry, ask that again. We had a little technical difficulty there.
All right. You want to start again?
No, just that. What was the question? I'm sorry. This is our first time doing live, so if you're on live and we're getting the hang of this. So what are we talking about? We're talking about injuries.
Injuries, unfortunately, COVID too. Are you surprised that we're
Yes.
talking about it? It's 4 weeks in. I mean, I guess we should be glad it didn't start in week one, right?
Yeah, definitely some big COVID news, I'm sure.
Hey, I'm Chris Magano.
If you haven't heard by now, again, apologies for the background. I'm trying to figure. I want to make sure if you guys are with us live that we get to your questions. So I'll get better at this as we go on. But yes, we got some big COVID, and obviously the big one is New England had a positive test with a pretty prominent player, right?
I'd say kind of prominent. And if you guys didn't hear, yeah, quarterbacks for both the Chiefs and the Patriots are positive. That's a pretty big deal. Of course, Cam Newton out, and then unfortunately, also Jordan Ta'amu of the Chiefs. So won't be backing up Mahomes if they play, assuming they play. But that's the question: are they going to play right now? Again, this is the latest we've heard. Things change by the minute. So what we're hearing is that there are no new positives other than Cam on the Patriots, which is good. And I haven't heard of anybody on the Chiefs also. So I think the plan is they play Monday night, and at the worst, it might be Tuesday. But we heard that before with the Steelers and Titans. They said, "Oh yeah, we'll just do it on Tuesday." That didn't happen. So, I mean, what's your confidence level this game actually gets played on Monday? Because I'm not getting my hopes up too much.
Actually, my confidence level is pretty high right now because as of this morning, Adam Schefter tweeted out no new positives for the Patriots. So as long as there's no positives for the Chiefs, then the game is on. There's nothing to worry about. So I feel very good that this game will be played tomorrow. I think if you have the big time players on the Chiefs like Mahomes, Kelsey, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, that wide receiver, then I would feel good leaving them in my lineup tomorrow night and feel very good about that because it's unlikely that the guys you're going to replace them with are even close to their level, right? Now, other guys, more fringy guys like Sammy Watkins, Mecole Hardman, basically any Patriots player, right? Any Patriots player, I'd bench those guys because it's not like you need those guys if the game is played, right? Like if you don't have Rex Burkhead, you can find a replacement for Rex Burkhead or Sonny Michel or James White or even Julian Edelman without Cam Newton. So that's kind of how I'm approaching it. If I have one of the big four Chiefs players, I'm leaving them in and I'm feeling good that the game's going to go on. If you can get a backup from the Monday night game that will probably be played after, which is Packers Atlanta. So there's some good options probably on your waiver wire for each one of those guys. Otherwise, I think you can bench the fringier guys and find a replacement.
Yeah, agree totally. Those big name players and Chiefs, that you're not going to replace their their stats if they do play. So, I mean, unless you have a much better option, if you just happen, like for example, if you Clyde Edwards-Helaire, maybe he's your top running back. Well, if you happen to pick up James Robinson and off waivers, and he's like your fourth running back, and he hasn't been starting for you, well then yeah, you plug him in instead. But that's the exception. There's not too many situations probably where that happens. So as far as the Patriots, here's another reason why I'm not starting pretty much any Patriot this week. If Cam Newton doesn't play, but they still play the game, you're looking at Brian Hoyer as the starting quarterback. I'm not starting Julian Edelman. Sorry, even him. I'm not starting N'Keal Harry. I mean, not that there's that many great options anyways. I mean, if you're starting a Patriots running back anyways, I'm like, you're doing it wrong. So yeah, I'm off of that whole offense basically because Cam Newton was the most valuable piece, and without him, it's going to be what we were afraid of in the first place, right? It's going to be an ineffective Patriots offense, and they're going to be down big against the Chiefs, and they're going to be trying to come back, and it's going to get ugly. At least that's the way I see it.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so let's get on to something else. Actual injuries. Well, actually, let's talk about non-injuries, or injuries that were injuries and now they're not, or something like that. Let's talk about the guys who are going to play. Questionable going into the week 4, and now it looks like they are in. So some of your big name players that you can breathe a sigh of relief and hopefully keep in your lineup. So right now, DeAndre Hopkins, who I had as my top ranked wide receiver this week. Yeah, it looks like he's going to play. I know a lot of people are freaking out because he missed practice, I think Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. But they were saying all along, it looks like he'll play. And now, sure enough, he will play. Also interesting that Christian Kirk, who didn't play before, in last week, he also is in. So, Chris, this puts a dent. All those Andy Isabella truthers, they're going to have to wait at least another week. But Hopkins is obviously you're going to start him. A guy like Kirk, you have any interest in him?
Not no, I he was a guy I had interest in if Hopkins missed and he was in, right? Because he's he was already doing some okay things with Hopkins in there, getting a zillion targets every week. But with Hopkins in the lineup, no, the only guy you want in this passing game really is Hopkins.
Yeah, I agree because he's pretty much the only guy they're throwing to is Hopkins.
Yeah.
I mean, the guys will get a few targets here and there sprinkled, but yeah, and especially coming off a groin injury, I don't really trust Kirk anyway. So, but keep Hopkins in. Assume this game is pretty much going to be as you expected before the week started. Joe Mixon, pretty big name. A lot of people are down on him anyways. A lot of people ready to sell, and bench and all this. And then he was questionable, so it's like great, just get rid of the guy. But he is in, right? He's going to be fine, and he's going against the Jags. What's your confidence level though with Mixon because of that questionable tag going in, and he hasn't really been doing that great.
Yeah, I mean, my confidence level isn't high regardless because what have you been getting from Joe Mixon really? Um, so yeah, confidence level not high, but he's in. You probably have to play him. But again, like I talked about, I don't remember which video we talked about Joe Mixon on. Maybe it was our start sit. But I think you have to treat him. He's more like a RB2 right now. You can't he's not like a every week must start. If you have a better option, by all means, play that guy. Um, but I'm not worried about his anything with the injury. If it was something, it was a late add to the injury report, which is usually never good. But the fact that he was late add and is still playing gives me hope that okay, it was probably just a minor thing. He's fine.
Yeah, so I guess whatever you were hoping for Mixon going into this week, you kind of get that. I do have him below Robinson just because again the Bengals run defense is actually worse than the Jaguars run defense. Jaguars are a little worse on pass defense. Depends how you think the game flow is going to go. We both are big on Burrow this week, as we talked about in the quarterback episode. We think that the Bengals are still going to just let it fly, and so I don't expect great things from Mixon, but not because of the injury, like you said. And then your boy Scary Terry, or as you say, McLaurin F1. He's in, but I'm a little worried too about this matchup going against Baltimore. But also, I'm also worried. It's the same reason I say I'm not going to start Julian Edelman or some of those other Patriots receivers. Not that they were doing that great, but McLaurin, we know he's the guy there. We're getting word now, not surprisingly, that Dwayne Haskins could get benched this week. Not a surprise based on what Ron Rivera's been saying about him, but it's possible that we see Alex Smith, I guess, by halftime. I mean, is this enough between that and the injury? You're just going to back off McLaurin completely against Baltimore?
No way. I think you got to play him. He's too good. He's putting up too many fantasy points. I think my feeling is if they do move on from Haskins, if they bench him, it's going to be Kyle Allen, not Alex Smith. Um, Kyle Allen just played in the NFL last year, so I feel like, and he played for the head coach of the Washington football team. So
True.
my gut is if they bench Haskins during the game, it will be Kyle Allen, not Alex Smith. And just real quick, just got word no positive tests for the Chiefs, and the NFL has announced that the Patriots Chiefs will kick off at 7:05 Eastern tomorrow. So again, I feel very good about starting your big time Chiefs players in that game. It looks very likely that it will be played tomorrow at 7:05 Eastern.
Unless something changes, which
Well,
always
yeah,
happens. But yes,
of
I
course.
know.
But as of now, and I'm sure they will take all precautions to keep the players away from exposure as much as they possibly can. So
Yeah, you would think at this point they'd be quarantining every single one of the players in their own separate hotel room, at least until tomorrow. But okay, so that's officially official. We got word now the
yeah,
game is scheduled. We never got that with Pittsburgh at Tennessee, right? We just get, oh, maybe it'll be played, they'll push it back. But if they're setting a time, it sounds like it's on.
yeah, and no, and the only positive test so far for either team is Newton, and yeah, the practice squad quarterback for the Chiefs. So it's we're looking good. So I'm feeling very confident about that game right now.
All right, so confident the game will be played, but again, I'd have to reinforce the fact that I'm not confident at all in the Patriots' offense with Brian Hoyer leading the way, or if they go to Stidham, it doesn't matter. So I'm completely off. I mean, I'm trying to think: is there a player that I might even think about starting on the Patriots? And the answer is be maybe James White. I don't even know if James White is playing because he didn't play
Yeah.
last week, and so yeah, just don't touch the Patriots with your Chiefs. Stick with the plan as usual. I would say. Watkins and Hardman, they're fringy, wide receiver four types anyways. So, okay, so let's move on. Another good news here. Chris Carson, okay, this is an interesting situation that completely did a 180 during the week. We thought Chris Carson was going to miss like 1 or 2 weeks. And so big waiver wire ad was Carlos Hyde. And so guess what? Of course, Chris Carson is good to go. He's going to play. Carlos Hyde is out. Okay, he's the one who's not playing. He's got a shoulder injury apparently that just happened. I don't think we even heard about this during the week. So get Hyde out of your lineup if you, for some reason, put him in. And Carson, not only is he going to be starting and be a good play in this matchup, he's the only guy now because Carson, is there and Hyde isn't. His backup is out. So Carson, I mean, he might even be a top 10 running back this week going against the Dolphins.
Yeah, this was crazy. My only concern here is how does a guy go from being like, hey, he's gonna miss a week or two to nah, he's good. Like, is that knee really 100%, or did the Hyde injury force Seattle's hand a little bit, and they're like, well, okay, let's rush Carson back. Um, but I agree, especially with everything going on right now. I think you have to put him in your lineup. If he's out there, you got to put him in your lineup. I mean, who are you realistically starting over him? Some guy you grabbed off waivers this week or something? You're better off just rolling out Chris Carson, hoping that that knee wasn't as bad as they said, or he somehow recovered much faster than they expected, and he's good to go. Because, like you said, it's a good matchup. The only other guy I think is Travis Homer, who hasn't really been doing much anyways. So yeah, you got to feel pretty good about Chris Carson. So here's a question for you, because my wife actually has this exact situation in our home league: Chris Carson or Joe Mixon?
I'm going with Carson, just because of that. The fact that, like you said, Carson's a guy who's been playing. He's been banged up and he's had injuries, right, the last several years. But he's a guy who plays through them. He's a warrior. He's that type of guy who, even though with a lot of players, they might sit out this week. Maybe it forced their hand because of Hyde getting hurt unexpectedly. But I mean, that's it. He's going to get 80% of the running back touches maybe this week, and it's a great matchup. So yeah, I'm higher on Carson now, and not because of the injury thing, just because he's been more effective. Um, that's just me. It's close though. It's close. I don't have Mixon way down or anything. I have Carson maybe as like my 11th running back, and I have Mixon like 12th. So, but that goes to speak like what you said. I mean, who else you got really? Once you get past the 20th running back, realistically, it's a crapshoot. So once you're out of RB2 territory, yeah, you're struggling anyways. I mean, I had even Carlos Hyde, even after I knew Carson was playing and thought Hyde would still kind of be there as the backup. I still had Hyde in my top 30 as running back just because there's nobody else. So yeah. Let's see. What about more running backs here? I think you almost have to start Ronald Jones because Fournette is out. But do you feel good about starting Ronald Jones? I guess the good thing is that he's probably going to get most of the carries, but then you're going to see Shady probably work his way in somehow.
Yeah, I mean, do I feel good about it? No, of course not. It's Tampa Bay. Um, right? Yeah, like you said, Shady will get worked in. I know Keyshawn Vaughn, I'm pretty sure, is on the active roster now. He'll probably get worked in, whether we like it or not. But at the same time, this is good for Ronald Jones, right? No Fournette. It looked like last week Fournette kind of took over, and it was like, okay, now it's Fournette's time, and then he's out with an injury. So things kind of break in Ronald Jones's way. I feel good about Ronald Jones as like a low end RB2 which, like you said, that's better than probably most of your other options, right? So, yeah, I wouldn't say roll Ronald Jones out with confidence, but you can roll him out.
Just roll them out there and see what happens. Yeah, I mean, how many running backs are the clear starter and going to get most of the touches? There you go, and it's not a bad offense. And also, I guess it kind of helps the fact that Godwin is out. I mean, that's less passes to go around, and so yeah, if you have Ronald Jones, I mean, again, you're missing a guy like Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, all these big names. Then yeah, I would go with Jones. I wouldn't feel great based on the matchup either, though. All right, let's get to some receivers. Man, a game that coulda, shoulda, maybe would be high scoring. I don't know anymore. Atlanta, Green Bay. Atlanta, pretty much all their receivers were on the injury report at one point. Julio, of course. Last week gone. Calvin Ridley, who we thought was going to be surefire top 5 receiver. Now, of course, he pops up in the injury report, and then Russell Gage was in the concussion protocol. It looks like he's clear. Like, I don't see any injury designation on Gage. So I think if you were planning to kind of fire him up as a third, receiver or flex, you can do that. Gage, don't worry about the injuries. Julio and Ridley, I think, are still listed as questionable, but you kind of have to put them in your lineup, right? If even if you're not 100% sure they're going to go, I don't see how you can't.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't heard anything. Last week with Julio, there was a lot of chatter that, hey, he may not go this week, right? It's going to be a real game time decision. They're going to test him out. I haven't heard any of that this week with either Julio or Calvin Ridley. So there's nothing to make me think these guys aren't going to play. Um, I think they both practiced in a limited fashion this week, which is usually a good sign that, okay, they're playing. Like, I don't think Julio was even practicing last week. So I'd feel good, even though it's Monday night. And if they don't play, you're probably screwed because it's Monday night and you don't have a lot of other options. You don't have options anymore. I still feel good enough about him that I'm leaving him in my lineup. I mean, Calvin Ridley, he's putting up top 5 numbers every week. We know Julio has top 5 ceiling every single week. I don't see how you can bench these guys when it sounds like they're more than likely going to play.
Yeah, I mean, it's a no-brainer to me. And let's go to the other side of the coin here. Devontae Adams, I think still listed as questionable, but all signs point to the fact he is going to play. A guy like Julio, Devontae, you leave them in your lineup until you hear for sure that they're not going to play. And of course, it was really tough. I think it was week 2 where there were game time decisions right up to the kickoff, and then you had to pull, Devontae out or whatever. But and then we went with Julio. He did play, and he got, I think, like 2 catches. It didn't, wasn't worth playing, but I think Julio's had enough time to recover where I feel like he is going to go, and haven't heard any pessimism. So I feel like unless there's a setback, I'm pretty good keeping Julio in. Ridley doesn't seem like serious. I'm pretty confident Ridley's going to play, but you got to keep them in, right? And then you can switch at the last second, which won't be a good thing because there's no receivers to switch to on the other side of the coin. So let me ask you about the Packers here. I think Adams is good, but there is another question: the fact that Lazard, my boy, who I loved in the preseason, now is out with core muscle surgery. They got MVS, so you can always plug him in. I mean, you could probably see him as a guy to plug in anyways, like regardless of whether you Devontae Adams or Ridley or whatever owner. But um, is there anybody else who might even be halfway tempting? Like, there's no other options really in Green Bay. So, first of all, do you see Valdez Scantling as a must start? And then there's anybody else that's even on the radar on either of these two teams if you do have to make a last minute decision?
I don't see MVS as a must start because, again, Adam's playing. He's going to soak up a ton of targets. Um, I view MVS more as like a wide receiver 4, wide receiver, maybe like a wide receiver 3 with upside. The guy I'd be looking at on Green Bay outside of Adams and MVS is Darius Shepard. He led the team. Well, he was number 4, I should say, led the team, or number 3 last week in routes and snaps and targets and everything, with Adams out. So he likely slots in as the wide receiver 3, which we know in this offense, right, with Aaron Rodgers, the way he's playing this year, he's back to an elite level, has some value. So if you have Adams or you have Julio or you have Ridley and you want to leave him in your lineup, but you want to have a backup just in case, and MVS got claimed off of waivers this week because he probably did, go grab Darius Shepard. And at least like, hey, worst case scenario, I have Green Bay's wide receiver 3. No, he's not going to put up Julio or Ridley or Devontae Adams the numbers more than likely, but he'll give you something, I'm sure. So that's how I feel about that. With MVS, the thing is with Aaron Rodgers, outside of Devontae Adams, he'll spread it around, right? He'll spread it around. So you don't know just because it looks like, yeah, MVS is the white. I mean, I could just as easily see Darius Shepard or Robert Tanyan or somebody like that being second on this team in receiving this week, and everybody being all upset about MVS because Aaron Rodgers, he's outside of Adams, he'll spread it around, he'll get it to whoever is open. So I do like MVS. I think he's a solid play. I certainly play him over Darius Shepard. But if you're looking at that Monday night and you're like, hey, I don't want to bench Julio, I don't want to bench Ridley, I don't want to bench Adams, but I want to have a backup just in case. Look at Darius Shepard of Green Bay.
Yeah, but that's a great point. I think it bears repeating. Darius Shepard, great pivot if you need to. Not somebody you want to add unless you have to, but I wouldn't be surprised either, like you said, because Valdez Scantling right now, I think 11th in the NFL in total air yards. And so you think, okay, well, Lazard out, he's going to see a bump. He's going to be, again, super valuable. Not necessarily because he is what he is. He's got those air yards because he's a deep threat. He's not going to all of a sudden, get peppered with targets. He's still going to be the same. Somebody else will fill that role. And I think Shepard is a smart play there. And I wouldn't be surprised too. I bumped up Tanya in quite a bit. I think I might have him as a top 20 tight end, which again is you're not starting him probably unless you're in some crazy two tight end league or some weird flex league with, tight end premium or something. But I think that you could definitely consider him as a streamer. But yeah, Shepard is a smart pivot play if you need to. And then speaking of air yards, Deshaun Jackson had been one of the top 5 early on. Then he got banged up, which is no shock. Deshaun Jackson is out. So the question here is, of course, why are you considering any Eagles receiver? But if you are, why is it Greg Ward?
Because he's basically the Eagles' number one wide receiver. We saw this towards the end of the season last year. Now we're seeing it here early in the season. He's really their only healthy wide receiver. Dallas Goedert is out. Jeffrey's not ready yet. I mean, I shouldn't say he's their only healthy wide receiver, but he's clearly their best healthy wide receiver, and I air quote best, right? Because Greg Ward, with all due respect to Greg Ward, would not be starting on most NFL rosters. So, yeah, I think he's a great. He was probably already added this week. Maybe not in shallower leagues, but in deeper leagues he's been added. But if he's still on your waiver wire, and you do have somebody that you're not sure about, or maybe you have one of the Patriots wide receivers, or you were thinking about rolling out Watkins or Hardman, I think Ward's an okay pivot. Should be relatively safe. I don't know if the ceiling is necessarily there in this offense right now, but the floor should be there.
Yeah, I think Ward would be one of those kind of safe, unexciting guys, but he can get you some points. He's going to get targets. He might be kind of what we expected Golden Tate to be, except that, he might actually do it. And then, not that this is super fantasy relevant, but John Hightower could start. He could be kind of like a MVS light, I guess, just as more of a field stretcher, might make a big play once in a while. But of course, you probably shouldn't have too much interest in this Eagles offense outside of Miles Sanders. And then one more wide receiver note here. You already know deep threat, Henry Ruggs and Brian Edwards. Both those rookies are out. I think Ruggs is definitely, actually he's listed as doubtful, but yeah, he's not going to play. So you're going to see lots of Darren Waller, as we already told you. I do think Hunter Renfrow could be a sneaky play here because they got nobody else to throw to.
Yeah, I agree. Again, he was a I wouldn't say a hot waiver pickup, but in deeper leagues he was a waiver pickup. But if you're in a shallower league, maybe even some 12-team leagues, he might still be out there on your waiver wire. So if you're desperate, and Buffalo is getting destroyed by slot receivers this year, so I think Renfro is in for a big game. Now he could certainly fall flat, right? So it's not like this is a sure thing. So you're not, don't put him in over somebody you feel better about. But if you're, in a tough situation right now, like a lot of us are, I think you could do worse than Hunter Renfro.
Yeah, I mean, not as bad a play as you might think. He had a pretty good, stat line last week. So yeah, don't feel too bad if you have to start Renfro, especially if you do have to make a last second switch. Good news for the tight ends is I don't see any major injuries for tight ends, at least not that I know of. Nobody that you were going to start anyway. So end on that positive note. And also, as far as we know right now, going back to the beginning, The Chiefs and the Patriots are going to play Monday night. The Saints and the Lions are still playing as scheduled because it was what, a false positive.
Yeah, apparently the fullback tested positive, but then they retested him and he was negative, so it was a false positive. So that game should be played as scheduled, no changes there. So yeah, it looks like other than the Tennessee Pittsburgh game, which we already knew about, it looks like the games will go on as well. Other than Chiefs moving to Monday night, all the games will play as scheduled. But in this
All
COVID
right.
world, I mean, things change in an instant, right? So definitely,
Yeah.
definitely don't have backup plans. Grab some of these guys on Monday night. Like we talked about Robert Tonyan. If you have Kelsey, you can grab a guy like what, I don't know. Ryan Hill might still be out there. Maybe Jamal Williams might still be out there if you need a backup to like Clyde Edwards-Helaire. We talked about Darius Shepard if you need a wide receiver. Maybe MVS if you're in a shallow like 10-team league or something. He might still be out there, so go grab him. Um, Obviously at quarterback, if you don't, there's not going to be a quarterback on Monday Night Football. Matt Ryan and Rodgers are probably already owned. So, but those are some guys you can grab if you want to leave those guys in and roll the dice on Monday night, which it looks like the game. The NFL's told the teams this is what time we're playing, so it looks good that we're going to have a football game.
Okay, so it's just like the, week one opener, you got double header on Monday night. No
Yeah.
complaining about that, right? That's not the worst thing.
No, the only
So,
downside for the Chiefs is they then play Thursday night. So I don't know what the NFL may move that game and move another game to Thursday night. I'm not really sure how they're going to do that. Um, we'll see, but it does look like the Chiefs Patriots are going to play Monday night.
all right. So again, the smartest plan is keep checking basically injury news every 5 minutes and refreshing your feed. Thankfully, we don't have that much longer till game time, and then you can just stop worrying about it. But as a lot of people have said, just always keep in mind that as much as we love fantasy football and the NFL, it is just a game, and your one loss record in this fantasy game isn't the most important thing going on right now. So, count your blessings and be thankful that it's not you that's going on the IR, right? And that, having to be quarantined. So don't worry, you'll get by without Cam Newton or, your Titans players. All right.
Yeah,
But you do want to win and you're setting your lineup to win. Hopefully our advice has helped. Check out if you have some time between now and kickoff, our start sit advice and everything else we put out all week. A ton of content here, guys. Hit the subscribe button right now. You're going to get all this every week from us. Game day live, right? Start sit waivers, breaking news, all of it here at the Endgame. All right. Thanks for checking us out.